Dankeschön. Kannst du mich hören?
Wir hören Sie gut.
Ja, ja, entschuldigen, ich habe ein bisschen Deutsch in Schule gelernt, aber wenn ich versuche zu sprechen, jetzt klinge wie eine kleine Jugend, so the rest is in English.
That's no problem.
Good. So I'm going to give some results from a survey that we made in a number of European countries, and I give a few of the highlights of the results of this survey. Let me see if I can change. So here are some of the key kind of background on the survey and what we did. As I said, a bit uneven representation from across Europe, but still we managed to get a few. So it was implemented in last year from May until August. It was translated into 15 languages. There are more in Europe, but I think we covered all the main ones, and organized and promoted by the member associations of the EMEA. Some of the main results, or just the overview of where the respondents came from. So we got more than 11,000 answers to this survey. And as you can see, the medals go to Norway, where we do have a very strong association. Sweden and Germany in silver and bronze medals. If it was a competition, which it is not. And then you can see more than, or 10 countries had more than 400 responses so we got a fairly good one. I should also say that as more or less exactly the same survey plus something more is now being promoted in the US and UK to try to reach more the English-speaking countries of the world. So it will be interesting later to also compare Europe with North America. 84% of the respondents were women, which is not untypical and maybe representative for the frequency of ME CFS between men and women. So here are some of the main results on the seriousness of the illness. We used this classification that is used both by the international consensus criteria and adopted by the guidelines of the Norwegian Health Directorate, where you have the very ill, that you are completely bedridden and you need help for even the basic functions to work, like eating and toilet, etc. The serious, which are mainly in bed, moderate, you're housebound, and the mild, and a category better than mild, but not completely healthy. So one thing that is quite I think is the distribution among this. It has commonly been assumed that about 25% have severe or very severe ME. What we found this pattern here, roughly half are in the moderate category, with ME being mainly house ridden, and then somewhat smaller percentages of very severe and severe. You see the dark red at the bottom of the table here. If you look at the countries, and this is a lot of countries, I put just in alphabetical order, it's more or less the same pattern. Germany, about half moderate. I think there is a higher percentage still of very severe and severe in Germany compared to the, for example, the total here. 4.5 very severe, 2.4 here. 21% up here with the severe, and 16 here. So whether this is actually, it has also who is responding, but it seems by this criteria that it's somewhat slightly more. We also have some other countries, the Finnish, I have a joke about them, that they're kind of more used to sauna and endure problems, the Finnish people, that may be reflected, but you also have a slightly different pattern here with much more in the mild category. And one of the key things that a number of studies have found out is the link between having an early onset, becoming sick before you are 20 years old, and the seriousness of the illness. Now, this is not about the prognosis, but just saying that among those that are severely ill, there's a much higher share that became ill when they were young. If you look at the numbers for Germany here, it's 32% versus 18 of those, say, among those very severe groups here. It's a similar pattern for all the rest of Europe, but it's even more pronounced here. So you see the differences here are even bigger when it comes to Germany. So it's a strong association, and it's even stronger in the more than 1,000 patients that answered from Germany. One of the interesting or kind of things that is complained is a long time before the onset, the time you get ill until the diagnosis is set. And here are some of the average, the mean, which is just the average. The median is, the interpretation is how long time does it take before 50% is being diagnosed. And it varies a lot between UK and Denmark up here, average 9 to 5 years, with Germany's 5. And if you look at the median, Germany also kind of in the middle. So on average, about 7 years, or if you look at this figure to the right, after 4 years, half of those that became ill with ME, they have received a diagnosis. Does it get any better? And in some countries it does. In Norway, the period for diagnosis have actually gone down. For most countries, you see on the right here, it has not. For Germany, it has not either. In fact, it has increased. You see the mean period from about 4.5 years for those diagnoses set in the early here. And it has steadily increased up to the numbers you have now, getting close to 8 years. So no improvement there. It's actually getting schlechter. Does it matter how seriously ill you are? And it's kind of surprising, I think, this figure here, the diagnosis by severity. So the more severely ill you are, the longer the period to get a diagnosis, except for the small group that is severely ill here. But in general, you find this pattern. You find a similar pattern if you look at all countries, but not, it's even stronger among the German patients. We also looked at the difference between men and women, and it's longer for women, 7 versus 6.3, or 4 versus 3.5 years. So women kind of wait a bit longer before they have to wait a bit longer before they get their diagnosis. What is the course of the illness? Does it improve over time, or does it get better? We had 2 questions on this. I just report on one of them, where we asked about 8 typical courses of illness. And I put them here and merged. So the red is bad, green is good, and blue is kind of stable. So the course of illness, they're typically here, if you look at the red one, it's either deterioration initially and gradually, or fluctuation gradually getting worse. The gray is fluctuations throughout, fluctuations and more stable here, which may not be that bad, or the green that they are improving. Overwhelming is getting worse or high fluctuations. I think Germany also stands out here. say, compared to Norway, where this group that have been able to stabilize the illness, it's much smaller than say in Norway or in Europe in general, which is also, I think, an interesting finding that stands out here. So this is just comparing all the countries and where they are. This share that reports that they are getting worse. And you can see there Spain, Sweden, Croatia, and then Germany, and the smallest share up here, or kind of those that are, it's good to be at the bottom of this table, so to speak. And we also ask a lot about negative and positive factors that affects this, and these are small things at the end here, but it's clearly this activity regulation or pacing is the key for a better one. So these are things that kind of make you more, kind of have a positive effect. These are those on the right side here: pacing, acceptance, energy envelope, symptoms, coping, CBT, coming to that, was also mentioned as a good thing. Stress, worries, trying cognitive behavioral therapy as a cure, activities causing PEM, financial stress, all those things, not surprisingly, I have to say, but clearly confirmed the importance of activity regulation. I don't know how much, or I don't know a little about the debate about ME CFS in Germany, but this cognitive therapy, how that has been debated and discussed, it's much in Norway. And as you know, the nice guidelines that you have had a speaker on before today, so you know that well, that has kind of put some big questions mark behind that. So here are some. In the questions we ask about CBT as a cure or CBT as a kind of a coping strategy. So in the first figure here, very negative experiences with CBT trying to kind of healing ME. Overwhelmingly negative here with 24%, very negative here, and very few positive. Now, as coping, somewhat more positive, not surprisingly, but still also quite a bit negative here, maybe because of the stress the cure itself entails, or perhaps also because it is associated with kind of a way to cure ME through mental techniques and so on. Now here is a lot of countries just to see that the differences and how kind of Germany is kind of in the middle here. But you see some are quite negative on this. UK, where you have a lot of debate, very negative experiences. Denmark, half have very negative. Finland too, Sweden, Norway, where it has been promoted heavily and therefore negative. If you look at this coping and across some countries where it's relatively positive here and overall, but even in some countries, say the UK and Netherlands, where also it's even CBT as a coping strategy, try to manage the illness, it's considered quite negatively. Probably as a result of the way how different therapies, approaches to ME is in various across European countries. One thing we tested or tried to find out is if you look at CBT as a cure, how does the experience vary by how severe the illness is? You see among those that are mild up here, somewhat negative, but those very severe, very serious ones here, a very negative experience. Almost all of them are on this seronegative experience among the very ill. And in fact, interesting, you find exactly the same pattern for coping here, that those that have a mild or better than mild are in general on the positive side, but those that are severe or severely ill are mainly negative experiences. Finally, we looked at the health system and the support you're getting and the experience with the healthcare system. What's your experience? Going from no support, little support, it's the red ones, bad, and good support or very good support here. So here, no support, 36, half, very little support. So almost 9 out of 10 patients report that you have little or no support from the healthcare system. And again, if you compare to some of your neighbors in the Netherlands or Belgium, somewhat same picture, but perhaps even more negative of no support. Again, Norway, it's hard to think that we are kind of a perfect country. In no way do I think that Norway is a perfect country, but at least it appears that those who say no support is smaller here. And between Norway and Germany is Denmark, where kind of, I don't know if you follow the debate, has been pushed this psychosomatic approach to ME and with some really horror stories about ME patients forced for psychiatric treatment, where it stands out as perhaps the worst country in Europe in terms of how ME patients are treated, and it's clearly expressed here. Again, if you kind of were to rank them, I'm surprised. Normally I think of Germany, Denmark, Austria as countries with good healthcare system, but they are at the top of people saying no or little support from the health care services. But no country should be happy with the situation. This is more in general public support, social security, social services, how they compare. And I've merged this into, merge the different types of support one may get into one index for that. Again, some Iceland, Norway, 2 small countries up north, it's relatively positive also for the social service in terms of getting disability benefits, etc. when you are ill. Serbia, Italy, Croatia at the bottom, and you can see Germany quite far from the best countries in Europe, and the best are not great, just to stress that once again. So just a few points of summary. I didn't talk much about it, but about in half of the cases, the report that it was infections that was kind of the onset of the illness. The link between young age and being seriously ill today, the diagnosis period, 7 years, the median 4 years, both in Europe and in Germany, and in fact increasing. Women, some discrimination, also in terms of time for diagnostics. About half report that they are getting worse off, and only 1 in 10 ME patients say they are improving over time. So it's either getting worse or being stable or stable with large fluctuations. We also talked about this CBT and the distinction there, and just on the satisfaction and feel being supported by the healthcare system. My last slide, it's when you compare Europe, the pattern for the illness, the Krankheitsmuster, as it's called, it's quite similar across Europe, the countries. But in most cases, there are a few outliers here and there, but the picture is there. The big difference is how it's treated by the healthcare system, the social services. That differs, and that has an impact. So ME CFS policies matter a lot for how the patients, the situation. And maybe it also matters for this pattern course of illness. I thought I should kind of present some good news about Germany being a nice example of how to do that. But it seems that compared to at least much of Europe and some Norway, Sweden, a few other countries, even UK, in some, there are more very severe or severe ill people. The link between young age and early onset and seriousness, it seems there. And one hypothesis is that if you are not aware and become kind of aware of that a young boy or girl is sick, you will have this recurring PEMS where you're gradually getting worse and therefore increasing the risk of being permanently bedridden or sick. So this share may reflect kind of the policies, their general attitude. The course of illness I talked about, that is seems to be a slightly worse off, and also in general the satisfaction with the healthcare system that is even worse than in many other countries across Europe. So that was a kind of a snapshot of the survey, and I wished I had more good news, but let's be honest, this is the situation, or at least what the survey numbers and more than 1,200 ME patients in Germany has told through this survey. So, danke schön.
So we say thank you.